April 14, 2014, night settles over Chibok, a small town in Borno State, northeast Nigeria. Inside the government girls' secondary school, teenagers prepare for final exams. Their focus on physics, chemistry, the building blocks of a future they hope to shape. Outside and unseen, a different force gathers. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by gunfire. Heavily armed militants storm the school grounds. By dawn, the horrifying reality emerges. 276 schoolgirls have been abducted, forced onto trucks, and driven into the vast, forbidding Sambisa forest. Their crime was seeking an education. Their captors, the brutal Islamist extremist group, Boko Haram. The Chibok abduction shocked the world. It wasn't just another tragic incident in a complex conflict. It was a direct assault on childhood, on female education, and on the very idea of progress. It ignited a global movement and exposed the deep failings in security and governance. This is the story of that night, the agonizing years that followed, and the enduring legacy of Nigeria's stolen daughters. To understand the horror of Chibok, we must first understand the ideology driving Boko Haram. Founded in the early 2000s by cleric Mohammed Yusuf, the group's very name became a chilling summary of its core belief. Boko Haram, loosely translated from Hausa, means Western education is forbidden. Yusuf preached that Western influence, secular governance, and modern schooling were corrupting Islam and promised a return to a pure fundamentalist state under strict Sharia law. This message found traction in northeast Nigeria, a region long suffering from poverty, neglect, and deep grievances against the state. A violent government crackdown in 2009, culminating in Yusuf's death in police custody, proved a turning point. Instead of crushing the movement, it fueled resentment and led to its transformation under the ruthless leadership of Abu Bakr Shekau. Boko Haram evolved into a full-blown insurgency, unleashing extreme violence. Bombings, village massacres, attacks on both Christian and Muslim communities who opposed them. The brutality escalated year by year. By 2014, the group was infamous, responsible for thousands of deaths and the displacement of over 1 million Nigerians. Crucially, schools remained a primary target, embodying the Western contamination Boko Haram vowed to eradicate. Long before Chibok, they had systematically attacked educational institutions, killing teachers and students, and burning buildings. A horrific precursor occurred just 2 months prior, in February 2014, at a boys' school in Buniyadi. Fighters murdered 59 students, many reportedly burned alive. The threat wasn't abstract. It was immediate, deadly, and documented. Despite this terrifying backdrop, the government girls' secondary school in Chibok, predominantly attended by Christian students, was reopened temporarily in April 2014. The reason was for essential final examinations. Against the advice suggested by widespread school closures across Borno State, dozens of girls returned to campus, determined to complete their studies. Reports indicate close to 300 students were present that fateful night. Security was minimal. Perhaps a few police officers, a soldier or two, tragically inadequate for the known risks. Around 11 p.m. on April 14th, the militants struck. They arrived in a convoy, overwhelming the school's security. According to accounts gathered later, the attackers, some possibly disguised in military uniforms, killed the security personnel on duty. Chaos ensued as they moved through the compound, setting classrooms and dormitories ablaze. A symbolic act of destruction. The terrified girls were roused from sleep, rounded up at gunpoint, and forced onto open-back trucks. The convoy then departed, heading south towards the dense Sambisa forest, a known Boko Haram sanctuary, roughly 30 kilometers away. The abduction was swift, brutal, and terrifyingly efficient. Yet even in these first moments of terror, flickers of defiance emerged. As the trucks navigated rough terrain in the darkness, some girls seized desperate opportunities. They jumped from the moving vehicles, risking severe injury. Others reportedly grabbed onto low-hanging branches, pulling themselves free. Some managed to slip away when the convoy paused. In those initial hours, it's estimated that around 57 girls escaped this way. Their harrowing testimonies provided the first confirmation of the mass abductions scale. In the immediate aftermath, anguish mixed with confusion, while distraught parents and local volunteers quickly organized desperate search parties, venturing into dangerous territory on their own. The official response seemed paralyzed. Reports from the ground indicated a lack of any significant coordinated pursuit in those critical first hours and days. The Nigerian government, under President Goodluck Jonathan, faced intense criticism for its handling of the crisis. Compounding the situation, a statement was issued by the authorities on April 16th, claiming inaccurately that most of the girls had already been rescued. This announcement raised false hopes, only to be retracted later, severely damaging public trust and fueling anger among the families. President Jonathan himself remained silent on the specific abduction for several days, an inaction widely perceived as indifference and which created a leadership vacuum. Some say this became the critical moment the president lost most Nigerians' trust. He would pay for this by not being re-elected. This vacuum was filled by the voices of ordinary Nigerians and civil society. Protests erupted. On April 30th, thousands marched in Abuja, the capital, drawing on the impassioned pleas of activists like Obi Ezekwesili. A simple, powerful demand emerged and was amplified online. Hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. The hashtag went viral almost overnight. Suddenly, Chibok was a global story. People across the world held vigils and protests. Prominent figures, from the US First Lady Michelle Obama to education advocate Malala Yousafzai, shared the hashtag, demanding action. The intense international media pressure forced the Nigerian government to publicly engage and accept offers of assistance, intelligence gathering, and surveillance support from nations like the US, the UK, and France. The campaign demonstrated the power of global solidarity, amplified by social media. But even as the world rallied, Boko Haram's leader, Abubakar Shekau, delivered a chilling video message in early May. He brazenly claimed responsibility, mocked the outcry, threatened to sell the girls as slaves or marry them off, and reiterated his decree: Western education must end. His defiance underscored the grim reality. The girls were captives in a brutal conflict, their fate uncertain. For the girls who remained captive, the years that followed were an ordeal of unimaginable hardship and abuse. Based on detailed accounts gathered from those who later escaped or were released, life inside Boko Haram camps, often hidden deep within the Sambisa forest, was defined by fear and coercion. Forced conversion to Islam was a primary tactic. Survivors described being whipped, threatened, and psychologically tormented until they submitted. Forced marriage to fighters was rampant. Girls reported being treated as property, handed over to militants, enduring repeated abuse. These were not marriages. They were acts of slavery. Daily life involved forced labor, cooking, cleaning, fetching water and firewood, sometimes even being forced to carry ammunition or loot villages during attacks. Basic survival was a struggle, with scarce food, unclean water, and virtually no medical care for rampant illnesses like malaria or injuries. Constant indoctrination and psychological abuse aimed to break their spirits and deter escape was a norm. They were told they were forgotten, that escape attempts would be met with death. Yet, amidst this darkness, incredible resilience emerged. Some girls secretly kept diaries, documenting their experiences and maintaining their sense of self. They formed deep bonds, supporting each other through the trauma. Tragically, survival was not guaranteed. Testimonies from escapees confirmed that an unknown number of their classmates died in captivity, succumbing to illness, starvation, the harsh conditions, or possibly killed during military operations targeting the camps. The exact number remains unknown, another painful layer of the tragedy. Securing the freedom of the remaining girls proved agonizingly slow and complex. Behind the scenes, delicate negotiations unfolded over years. Reports consistently point to the crucial role played by intermediaries like the Swiss government and the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, in facilitating dialogue between authorities and various Boko Haram factions. These talks were fraught with difficulty. The government often publicly denied paying ransoms or making prisoner swaps, but investigative journalism frequently suggested such deals were indeed made, involving the release of detained Boko Haram commanders in exchange for groups of girls. The internal fracturing of Boko Haram into rival factions further complicated matters, making it unclear who held which captives and who had the authority to negotiate. Despite these challenges, tangible progress occurred. In October 2016, there was a breakthrough. 21 Chibok girls were released following months of negotiation. It was a moment of intense relief and the first major sign that diplomacy could yield results. A larger release followed in May 2017, when 82 more girls were freed, again reportedly after complex negotiations involving a prisoner exchange. Alongside these major releases, individual escapes and rescues continued sporadically over the ensuing years. Girls were found wandering near the forest, rescued by vigilante groups, or liberated during military operations against insurgent camps. Each return, often years after the abduction, was a bittersweet victory. By late 2017, to escapes and releases combined, around 106 girls had regained freedom. Yet, this still left well over 100 unaccounted for, their fate shrouded in uncertainty. For the returned girls, freedom was not an end to suffering, but the start of a new, difficult journey. Reintegration proved immensely challenging. Many bore deep psychological scars, PTSD, anxiety, depression, from the horrors they had endured. Physical health issues from malnutrition to injuries required long-term care. Added to this was the heavy burden of social stigma. In their conservative home communities, years spent in captivity, especially for those forced into marriages or returning with children fathered by their abductors, led to suspicion, judgment, and sometimes outright rejection. Boko Haram's tactic of using other abducted girls as suicide bombers had sown deep mistrust, making acceptance harder. The children born in captivity faced their own battle for acceptance. The government established rehabilitation programs, providing counseling, medical aid, and educational support. International organizations also assisted. While these efforts helped many, they faced criticism for being slow, under-resourced, or insensitive to the girls' specific needs and trauma. A decade later, the Chibok abduction has left an indelible mark. It transformed Boko Haram from a regional threat into a globally recognized symbol of terror against education and women. The hashtag Bring Back Our Girls campaign remains a powerful example of citizen activism. Hundreds of schools in northern Nigeria remain vulnerable or closed due to insecurity. Tragically, the Chibok attack did not end the threat. Mass school abductions have continued with horrifying regularity across northern Nigeria. Since 2014, Amnesty International has documented at least 17 further large-scale kidnappings from schools, involving over 1,700 children seized by Boko Haram factions or, increasingly, by criminal bandit groups using kidnapping for ransom. Incidents in Dapchi, Kankara, Jangebe, and elsewhere show a devastating pattern. The core vulnerability exposed by Chibok persists. The lesson remains tragically unlearned. Today, the story of Chibok remains achingly incomplete. As of 2024, 10 years after they were stolen from their school, around 82 of the abducted girls are still missing. Their families endure a decade of agonizing uncertainty, oscillating between fragile hope and crushing despair. The passage of time has not dimmed their pain or their pleas for closure. The Chibok abduction stands as a profound tragedy, a testament to extremist brutality, but also to human resilience. The survivors who returned carry immense burdens, but strive to rebuild their lives, many pursuing the very education their captors tried to deny them. As one survivor, now studying law, reportedly stated, "We want to show the terrorists that they did not win. We are going back to school. That is our victory." Their courage is inspiring, but it does not erase the crime, nor the failure to bring everyone home. Remembering Chibok means bearing witness to their pain, demanding accountability, and insisting on the right of every child, everywhere, to learn without fear. The fight for Nigeria's stolen daughters continues. This marks the very first documentary presented on this channel. Our aim is to shed light on important incidents and narratives, bringing carefully researched stories to a wider audience. This film is also the first in a planned series focusing on pivotal events that have shaped recent history. If you found this account informative and meaningful, we believe you will find value in the stories yet to come. To stay connected and support our work in bringing these narratives to light, please consider liking this video if you found it impactful. Subscribe to the channel to be notified of future documentaries in this series. Comment below with your thoughts or reflections on the Chibok story. Share this video with others. Your engagement helps ensure these stories continue to be told and remembered. Thank you for watching.